चलिए अब आपको सीधे लिए चलते हैं वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में।
Corporate Affairs, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, for presenting the budget in Parliament today. Ma'am, we are privileged and honored to have you with us. I extend a warm welcome to you, ma'am. I extend warm welcome to Minister of State for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shri Anurag Singh Thakur ji. I welcome Finance Secretary, Dr. Ajay Bhushan Pandey, Secretary Expenditure, Shri T.V. Somanathan, Secretary Financial Services, Shri Devashish Pandey, Secretary Economic Affairs, Shri Tarun Bajaj, Secretary Deepam, Shri Tuhin Kant Pandey, Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. K.V. Subramanian. First, the Finance Minister will make her opening remarks, then we will take some questions from you friends. Ma'am, over to you, please.
Thank you and good afternoon. This budget, of course, comes at a time when all of us desire to give greater impetus to the economy. And that impetus we thought would be qualitatively spent and give the necessary demand push if we choose to spend big on infrastructure. That is why, if there are two important features of this budget, it is that we chose to spend big on infrastructure, which spans across roads, bridges, ports, power generation, and so on. And also to, as a second feature, attend to the need of the health sector. And even there, capacities for better health management had to be brought in the light of what we have gone through in the last year. And therefore, capacity building in health has taken a very big place in the budget. I've just given a probably just a feeler on what capacities we are talking about, whether it is establishing of labs, whether it is establishing of National Institute of Virology, or whether it is looking at the blocks where you need critical care centers, or whether you're looking at testing labs. Let's just remind ourselves that when the lockdown happened, we had probably just a few, two, if I'm right, 2 or 3 testing labs in this country. During the lockdown, that number was increased to a couple of hundred. Now, therefore, one of the things that we've aimed here is testing labs, Institute of Virology, aspirational districts having better health care. So, infrastructure spend for health has gone down to the level of planning for the block level requirements, aspirational district level requirements, state level requirements, and national institute level requirements. So 2 features, when I said, are one in general spending on infrastructure, for which there is a 37% increase in the budget. 5,45,000 crores is what we are giving for this year. And health, it was also something which received something like 94,000 crores in BE of this year, has gone to 223 lakh crores. So you find big numbers in health, big numbers in infrastructure. But this doesn't really mean that we've ignored agriculture, where there too we have placed emphasis. I've increased, as I read it out in the budget, the allocation for NABARD for, being able to send more credit through to the farmers. Agricultural infrastructure development cess is something which we are bringing in without on any one single item wherein we are putting the cess, the end consumer paying more than what he is paying today. It is just a restructuring we've done, for instance, of the basic customs duty, where it was, let us say, 12%, we brought it down to 7% and added possibly only 3% on the infrastructure development cess. End of the day, the consumer has ended up paying that much only or less. In no category has he ended up paying more after the agricultural infrastructure development cess. That we have done only because we wanted to be sure that in order to improve agricultural infrastructure, we have a dedicated amount coming out of the budget, rather than that going into the consolidated fund. It might still go, but we know what has got to be used for agricultural infrastructure. So if these are the kinds of things broadly we've done, equally important is the reform that we're bringing in the financial sectors. Disinvestment to continue, LIC to have IPO, insurance sector to have more in terms of opening up for 74% for FDI. These are very clearly steps, progressive steps in financial sector. Other than that, one major cry of all the banks have been the NPAs, for which we have been repeatedly giving capital infusion. In order that the bank books are cleared and cleaned up, we have come with an announcement of a formulation through which the NPAs will be culled out of the bank's books based on some formulation, not any discretion there. It goes to a holding company-like structure, which after doing the necessary, sprucing up and also cleaning up and weeding out problems of that particular asset, will be through an open process, attract asset reconstruction companies which can come and bid for those assets. Even at that stage, after some haircut obviously, banks will get some money back to those NPAs, for which they only kept provisioning for the NPA, but didn't have the wherewithal to dispose them off legitimately. So we are giving that comfort to the banks. And also for funding the infrastructural requirements, a development finance institution is being brought in. All lessons learned from the IDBI, which started as a DFI but later went on to become a scheduled commercial bank-like functioning and couldn't succeed at that, are taken on board. So this DFI, even as it comes with about a 20,000 crore given by the government, which with a little more every now and then added, will eventually be used for raising about 5 lakh crores in a matter of next 3, 4, 5 years, is a formulation where when the law gets passed on that, we will still have an opportunity for the private sector also to set up their own development finance institution. So this country is not going to be, the needs of this country are such that just one development financial institution which is set up by the government will be adequately meeting up with the demand requirements. No, and therefore we see a future for a DFI which is partly funded by the government and raises capital from the market, is also competing with private sector DFIs. Largely this much, but very quickly I'll move over to talking about how we have not lost the opportunity to clean up government's own books. I had started it in July 2019-20, continued it in February 20, and even now we have made accounts more transparent. Nothing is pushed under the carpet. You're showing clearly where's the money going. Money given to FCI is also brought on board. So accounting of government expenditure and revenue statements are all now lots more transparent and open, and absolutely upfront stated the fiscal deficit, where everybody was advising, and rightly because everyone had concern that the economy should revive, advising us, please spend more. We not only ensured that the capital expenditure of the government was repeatedly reviewed and spending was encouraged and pushed, we ensured that the spending will not get delayed, and that is why, even though we announced one capital expenditure amount during the BE, even that has gone up, that in the RE I had to make additional provisions for it. With that in mind, we have also increased the spending in the forthcoming year. As a result, borrowing increased. Our fiscal deficit, which started at 3.5 during February 2020, has gone to 9.5% of the GDP. So we have spent, we have spent. Otherwise, your fiscal deficit wouldn't have reached this money, this number. But does that mean that we are going to show it and forget it? We've also given a clear glide path for deficit management and bringing it down. The Finance Commission has also been suggesting that we should be giving a glide path. We've given our glide path, I think, which broadly explains where we are, broadly gives you a broad picture. Specific items are also there about which we can expand, but I suppose in response to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. 6.
Ma'am, you rightly said that the glide path has been mentioned, and you did lay it out that over the next 5 years we might see the fiscal deficit coming down. But how hopeful are you with the current expenditure roadmap that you have given, that the fiscal deficit for the next year will be contained in that particular figure of 6.8%? Because the borrowing number also again continues to be quite high. And what gives you confidence in terms of job creation? That is what people have been wanting to hear from you, because a lot of people in the pandemic lost their jobs and they are yet to get back their jobs.
Haven't we announced an incentive scheme for people to join back and people to take their jobs back, for employers to take employees who were thrown out, to bring them back and have some money paid from the government for their EPFO and so on? So we have worked out a scheme, and that scheme will run for the course of I think till about next year, June. We've allowed people to get all those people who they threw out of their jobs to be back in the job, for whom we will pay the EPFO for 2 years. So we have given an incentive for people to take them back.
That's the next question. I think let the next question be moved to the next person. 31.
लक्ष्मण बोल रहा हूँ CNB.
One minute.
You asked a question on the deficit, whether we will be able to contain ourselves in 6.8% or not. If you notice our revenue figures for this time, the revenue figures, if anything, are
4 करोड़ की जो है,
of you would have been coming out and telling us that we won't be able to achieve. So we have taken our nominal GDP 14.4% and the revenues at 16.7. So the buoyancy is only 1.16. We are hopeful that we will be able to get more than this and also achieve more in the other areas of non-tax revenue and the disinvestment. And we will definitely be within 6.8 and could be lower also.
Just to add on the job creation, the significant increase in outlay for infrastructure that ma'am has done will also have a sharp impact on job creation, especially in the informal sector, because construction activity actually creates both positive and negative, spillovers, basic positive linkages, and thereby job creation in the informal sector.
मैम है कि से पहले ये का एस्टैब्लिश ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा डिमांड पैदा हम लोगों से जो सेविंग है वो करने के में ऐसे ये डिमांड पैदा कर सकती है आपके हिसाब से, क्योंकि जो इंफ्रा पे खर्च करने की बात है या दूसरी चीजें उसमें लॉन्ग टर्म डिमांड आएगी, लेकिन इमीडिएट डिमांड है उसके लिए आपके हिसाब से कौन से प्रावधान किए गए?
No, No, that's not true. Infrastructure project may take long time to complete, but demand creation will happen immediately because as the work starts happening in the ground, people are going to get wages, orders are going to be booked for core commodities, for building of those assets. So demand generation happens immediately. The project completion may happen later.
Number 10.
मैम मैं मोनिका जी मीडिया से। मैम मेरा सवाल है कि कोविड और लॉकडाउन की वजह से बैंकों में काफ़ी एनपीए बढ़ा और आरबीआई की रिपोर्ट के हिसाब से भी कुछ 14% तक बढ़ सकता है इस साल सितंबर तक। तो ये जो 20,000 करोड़ रुपए की जो राशि जो बैंकों के लिए आपने जो अनाउंस की है, क्या ये पर्याप्त है उनको रिकैपिटलाइज करने के लिए? साथ ही ये जो 9.5% जो फिस्कल डेफिसिट है जीडीपी का, इसका इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ और इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी पर क्या असर रहेगा?
इसका असर अच्छा ही रहेगा क्योंकि इसका मतलब है खर्च कर रहे हैं सरकार। इसके कारण एफडी फिस्कल डेफिसिट इतना तक पहुंचा है। जब खर्च कर रहे हैं और क्वालिटेटिवली अच्छा खर्च कर रहे हैं, उससे एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ेगा। असर यही है। एम्प्लॉयमेंट बढ़ने में हर एक आदमी का हाथ में और पैसा होगा जिससे डिमांड बढ़ेगी। सो द वर्चुअस साइकिल गेट्स बिल्ट।
और मैम ये जो
Monica, no, Monica, this is 30.
20,000, let them absorb it first. We'll see as it goes. They are our banks.
33.
मैं शैलेश यादव हूँ A9 न्यूज़ एजेंसी से। मैम कस्टम ड्यूटी जो है गोल्ड पे एक तरफ तो आपने जो है कम करी है, 7.5% कर दिया उसको, और लेकिन सेस उस पर बढ़ा दिया है। तो इसका कितना इम्पैक्ट जो है गोल्ड और सिल्वर पर पड़ेगा? और दूसरा मैम एक अल्कोहल पे है कि वो एक्साइज ड्यूटी जो है, सॉरी कस्टम ड्यूटी, सॉरी सेस जो है 100% बढ़ा दिया गया है। तो उसका कितना इम्पैक्ट पड़ेगा अल्कोहल पे?
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, मैंने जैसे शुरुआत में कही, कस्टम ड्यूटी का रिडक्शन करने के बाद सेस को उसके ऊपर लगाने में पूरे कस्टम ड्यूटी के गिरावट जो हुआ वो भरपाई करने के लिए सेस नहीं किया, उसको कम किया। मगर सेस जो ऐड किया वो कम ही स्तर पर ऐड किया है, जिससे एंड कंज्यूमर के ऊपर ज्यादा और एडिशनल बोझ ना पड़े। Meaning, we reduced the customs duty and we levied a disproportionate amount of cess. So it was not the exact amount of reduction of customs duty that we levied in the form of a cess. So if, for example, 10% was brought down of customs, we have only added 5 to 6% of cess. So Baki, if anything, has reduced the price to the end consumer, or else in some cases it retained the price. किसी का प्राइस उसके कारण ज्यादा नहीं हुई। ये रीएडजस्टमेंट है। दो एक्साइज ड्यूटी के नाम पर हमें आता था या कस्टम ड्यूटी के ऊपर से हमारे कमाई थी, उसको रीस्ट्रक्चर करके उससे एक कार्व आउट निकाल करके एग्रीकल्चरल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के लिए उसको नाम देकर अलग तलग कर दिया। उससे एडिशनल कंज्यूमर के ऊपर बर्डन नहीं है।
15.
Ma'am, this is Ruchi Bhatia from ET Now. I want to understand from you, the economic survey projected a nominal GDP of 15.4%, the highest since independence, but the budget has pegged just about 14.4%. Why the difference, and why does the budget not share the same optimism that the economic survey did on the nominal GDP?
Light-hearted reply. There are two different institutions preparing it. They are not opposite to each other. One may be conservative because it's finance ministry. The other is flamboyant because it's economic advisor.
56.
नमस्ते, मैं आलोक प्रियदर्शी हूँ सीएनबीसी आवाज से। मेरा सवाल यह है कि जो आम आदमी कोविड के बाद एक्सपेक्ट कर रहा था कि उसकी जेब में पैसे पहुंचेंगे थ्रू टैक्स में डिडक्शन एग्जम्पशंस के जरिए सरकार ने वो रास्ता नहीं चुना है, लेकिन फिर भी इस बजट से आम आदमी समझने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि आखिर किस तरह से उसे राहत मिली है। अगर 2-3 पॉइंट्स अगर बता सके तो।
एम्प्लॉयमेंट क्रिएशन के लिए बहुत सारे खर्च हैं, पैसा पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड करने के लिए बहुत बड़ा पैमाने पर दिया गया है, जिससे आम आदमी को तुरंत जॉब्स का अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलेगा। छोटे मोटे कारोबार करने वाले का एक्सपोर्ट के लिए इंसेंटिव स्कीम्स भी लाए हैं, और डेफिनेशन एमएसएमई का बदल दिया। उनमें टैक्स सर्टिफिकेशन और ऑडिटर सर्टिफिकेशन ना लेने का वो सुविधा भी हम दिए। सो छोटे मोटे कारोबार करने वाले को उनके ऊपर कंप्लायंस का बर्डन कम कर दिया। डिमांड बढ़ाने के लिए एक्सपेंडिचर कर रहे हैं इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में। सो जब इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के खर्च हो रही है, उनके वॉट एवर प्रोड्यूस दे प्रोड्यूस, वो सब मांगने के लिए, डिमांड बढ़ाने के लिए हम कदम उठाए हैं। सो छोटे लघु उद्यमी को, मिडिल क्लास को इससे जरूर राहत मिलेगा।
156।
वित्त मंत्री जी, यहाँ पीछे प्रणय उपाध्याय हूँ, एबीपी न्यूज से। मेरा सवाल यह है कि बजट के अंदर एक प्रस्ताव रखा गया है कि जो भी हाई इनकम एम्प्लॉइज हैं उनके प्रोविडेंट फंड से जो इनको टैक्स में जो इंटरेस्ट में इनकम होती है उसका कैप 2.5 लाख के करीब रखा गया है। क्या आप इसे थोड़ा सा समझा पाएंगे कि क्या एग्जैक्टली ये प्रोविजन है?
मैं ब्रॉडली बोलती हूँ, एंड ऑल्सो एक्सपेंडिचर सेक्रेटरी इज हियर, ही कैन ऑल्सो एक्सप्लेन इट टू इट। Up to 2.5 lakhs we have kept as a ceiling that you can annually give it for this purpose, for which you get tax exemption, for which you get at 8% guaranteed interest return on that money, even that is tax exempt. What we have done now is, this fund is actually for the welfare of the workers, no doubt. And workers are not going to be affected by it, because anyone who earns less than 2 lakhs per month will still be paying his 12% without a hitch. It is only for big ticket money which comes into it because it has tax benefit and also assured about 8% return. You find huge amounts, some to the extent of 1 crore also being put into this each month. For somebody who puts 1 crore into this fund each month, what should be his salary? So for him to give both tax concession and also an assured 8% return, we thought is probably not comparable with an employee with about 2 lakhs who puts that money, gets tax concession and also gets 8% return. That person who will still be allowed to put money, but of course with a ceiling of 2.5 lakhs, will get for that amount tax concession, and for that amount 8% interest. So we are not reducing any worker's right, but at the same time getting tax exemption and also getting 8% rate of interest for somebody who puts 1 crore per month into the account, we thought maybe is not right, and therefore we have put that ceiling. 1 minute. Somnathan, would you want to explain something more to it?
No, I'll just add 2 statistics. The number of people who actually contribute more than the sum that we have indicated is less than 1% of the total number of contributors in the EPFO. So the people it affects is actually those who are not workers by any stretch of imagination, but are using the EPFO, which they were entitled to do, but they are a very, very small fraction of the total number of contributors.
264.
Ma'am, this side. This is Abhishek from Republic TV. Ma'am, you made a very interesting mention of a portal for gig economy. I think this is the first time this was found mentioned. Like, what kind of social security measures are we expecting for gig economy, contractual workers, laborers? Because post-COVID, I think the numbers must have swelled.
So a portal is going to be created where the gig workers, the construction workers, the migrant workers, their data would be picked up and kept there. And all the schemes relating to health, education, even the ones that we were trying to do during the COVID times would actually flow from there. So basically this is an attempt. We have a lot of data available with us for various segments of the society. This is one data we thought we should have because people come and go, and we saw during the COVID times that we actually needed that. So it is for that reason. And the codes that have come up actually will provide benefits to these gig workers. The contributions will come from their employers, and they would also be entitled to the benefits of Social Security as much as is available to the labor today.
22.